welcome on this beautiful evening in Sister Bay. Welcome to the second in our series of Sister Bay stories, which are stories about very important businesses and families in the Sister Bay area. So some of you know last month we did a program on the Bunda family and the Bunda store. And that's now on deck clothing. And then next month we're going to do a program on Al Johnson's. And then in September we have a program that Connie Groton House will be doing on the patio drive-in. And in October we will end up with a program that Fuzzy Sundstrom will be doing on Little Sister Resort. So let me go ahead then and introduce our speakers for this evening and the program for this evening. So, you know, Sister Bay has a very rich history in many respects, and people are very familiar with the Scandinavian nature of the heritage in Sister Bay, and appropriately so. But there are other ethnicities represented in the history of Sister Bay, and we're going to talk about that a bit tonight, and where another important family came from elsewhere in Europe, and I'll let our speakers talk about that. So that is the Roeser family. And although the Roeser name is no longer on a business in Sister Bay, that Roeser name was and is synonymous with business and social activity in Sister Bay for many, many years. It is an important family and an important business. Now, our speakers tonight are going to talk about that history, but I'm going to make mention of one other point about the important Roeser family that they may not bring up, so I'm going to make this on their behalf. This is our 50th anniversary booklet. It was published in 1962. And in this booklet, there is a little story of the Roesers, and one particular point about it I think is interesting, because they were not just big-time entrepreneurs and well-diversified. They were also giving back to the community. And here's what the story said in that regard. Their missions of untold help and charity contributed greatly in the struggles of the early pioneer settlers of Sister Bay. So they were not just important business people, they were contributors to the community. With that, I want to introduce our two speakers, Roberta Champeau, lifelong resident of Sister Bay, Matt Roeser, and then I'm going to let you all introduce the extended family that you brought with you tonight. So thank you for doing this.
I'm Roberta Champeau, and I just wanted to welcome all of you here and thank you for coming, especially those of you that came up from Green Bay and are going back tonight. It seems like a lot to do. But anyway, thank you so much, and I see a lot of buttons that say, I'm a Roeser, and I'd like to get one. So, my newfound cousin, Matt, I think we met on Facebook a long time ago. Yeah. Anyway, he was so interested in this presentation, so he will be giving the presentation, and I am so happy for that. But thank you so much, and here he is.
And thank you all for coming. I'm 52 years old, and I don't have the long history, but I hope I can cover it as well as I can. Roberta did a wonderful job putting this all together, so I'm going to be more of a narrator. Yeah, she's the presser of the buttons. So I'm going to do a lot of narrating, and I want to thank the Historical Society for putting this together. It has generated an enormous amount of conversation within our family, and that doesn't happen very often to lots of families that are spread out, and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and everybody. So this kind of brought us together, and we had I haven't seen some of my cousins and aunts and uncles in a long time. So the majority of us live in Green Bay or around Green Bay, so it's a little bit of a drive, but we're lucky enough to be not too distant and far away from Sister Bay. So in some of these slides, I'm going to probably go to my dad. He's 84, so he was born here, and my Uncle Lee they had an argument on who was actually the last to be born here. So just with that, we can kind of go through and start the presentation. So the first slide here is something that Roberta wrote up, so I'm just going to read it word for word, and I think it kind of segues into the presentation really well. Andre Roeser, a miller by trade, found his way to the lovely shores of Sister Bay because he heard there was a grist mill there. He came with his wife Leona in the fall of 1877 and settled in Sister Bay after living in other parts of Wisconsin. In 1883, they purchased the lumber mill, flour mill, home and dock, plus over 1.5 miles of shoreline, plus acreage from the Diamond Brothers. The Diamond Brothers, what Roberta has told me, was an Irish family that owned the lumber yard there, and we purchased it from the Diamond Brothers. I wondered what made the Roesers the pillars of Sister Bay, so I started research on the family, searching newspapers, documents, on ancestry books, and discovered that they were involved with just about everything. In addition to their businesses, they were instrumental in building the first Catholic church, the incorporation of the village, and the development of the volunteer fire department, and the creation of the village park and Bluffside Lane, to name a few. This is an advertisement from their business. Andre actually changed his name to Andrew in keeping with the American way of communicating up here and just Americanizing the name. Originally, most of the shipping in Sister Bay was in Little Sister. Both Big and Little Sister Bay were incorporated into the township of Liberty Grove in 1855. Sadly, a ship came to dock at Little Sister, and all the passengers except for one person on the ship had diphtheria, and all soon died. Andre Roeser was born in Belgium in 1842. He worked as a miller. When he moved to America, he worked in Pierce County, Algoma, Bailey's Harbor, and lastly, Sister Bay. When Andre came to Wisconsin, he was looking for a wife. He wanted to find a wife who could speak some language, and asked the Belgians in Luxembourg, Wisconsin, where he found someone who spoke the dialect. They sent him to Belgium, Wisconsin. There was a community of Luxembourgers. He found a farmer named Francis Antoine who had several daughters, and an arrangement was made that he should try to marry Leona. The father chose Leona because she was the smallest, and he thought being the wife of a miller would be easier for her than being a farm wife. After moving around a few years, they settled in Sister Bay. Leona, later changed to Leona, Antoine Roeser was one of the village midwives. Their mission of help and charity contributed to the early settlers of Sister Bay. Her mother had also been a midwife. She learned midwifery in Paris, which was 50 miles from where she lived in Luxembourg. Leona ran the boarding house for people who wanted to stay for a short time or all winter. This included meals, laundry. The fee was $1.50 a week. She had 9 children. 3 of the 6 died in childhood. She died in 1924 in Sister Bay. So that's a picture of the crew there. And I just wanted to take a second here to go into a really neat book that the Historical Society put together. It's called The Pioneer Women of Sister Bay. And the first paragraph here, because there was some tragedy that struck our family way back in the day. And she wrote, these were her words, "There's nothing so terrible as the death of a child. And when it was your own child, the loss is incomprehensible, and the guilt is overwhelming. I am the mother I am supposed to protect my children, to keep an eye and keep them safe. But I failed not once, but twice. 2 children I've lost forever. I believe, without going, one of the girls was on the dock and had a bicycle that went into the harbor and kind of took her dress got caught and she got taken down.
That's the little girl up here.
Is that Matilda?
Matilda.
So just really tragic. And they're buried in the cemetery here in Sister Bay. So going from the slide prior, the business actually, this is a picture of Adolph, one of the sons, and Julia taking a trip to California to see Matt. So
Adolph is the second that.
There's
Adolph
right there.
I think this one is Matt.
Oh, yeah?
No, that's Adolph.
Yeah. No, that's, they do look alike, though.
So Matt Roeser, one of the brothers to Andre, incorporated Sister Bay. And after the incorporation, he actually picked his family up and they moved to Colorado. And then from Colorado, they made their way out to California, and they live in a small little town north of Burbank called Solvang. So Adolph and Julia actually took a trip all the way out to the Roeser business out in Solvang, California. So that's the picture from that. Okay, the Roeser home was the center of much of the activity that happened in Sister Bay. The village business section seemed to center around the saw and feed mill, the dock, and the Roeser home. There were 2 stories in the basement of the house, and this was also an early post office. Catholic services were held about once a month in a room in the home. Everyone knew the Roeser family.
And the house is still there. Yeah.
And that house, you might recognize that house. It doesn't have the deck on top, I believe, but it's
The bottom deck is
by the condos that are on the other side of the harbor there, on the other side of the park. Matt's Creamery is attached to the left of the home. You can see the Roeser children and Andrew on the front porch. Notice how Andrew is standing. This is how he would stand to greet the boats as they came to dock at the pier. I'm going to interject a short little story here that's just really, really interesting. So my wife Polly was carousing around the internet years and years ago and came upon this story. So I wish we could go back to the family picture. So Andre Roeser was a very large man for the time, and he was kind of menacing looking. So he had the feed mill, so he would be in the harbor when these boats would come up from, a lot of times from Chicago. The passengers would come in to visit this beautiful area, and he was a businessman. And he was standing on the shore, just kind of watching as these boats come in. Well, the city council kind of there was some talk, and they needed to have a conversation with him because he was dressed like a worker. He had the beard, he was a big guy, and he had this fur hat that he wore. And the city council way back in the day needed to bring him in and say, that's not really presentable for our city and our little town here, and you're kind of scaring the people. So they put him on the city council. They made him actually a point of discussion. And they all took, so the Roeser family, I believe that they were land wealthy and maybe not money rich, okay? So they took up a collection and bought him a hat. And what was really interesting about this story is that there were stipulations that came with that hat. And they said he can't sit on it, He can't let it blow in the water. He had to take care of that hat, and then he could. They said then you can properly stand in the harbor and watch the boats come in because it's more proper. And that's actually documented. It's really actually a really great story. So we thought that was fun. So there was some tragedy that happened as well. So I mean, we're on this one here. Yep. So with a lumber mill, I mean, it was like a tinderbox, and there were a few fires that swept through each of these businesses. The first building was a flour mill and a sawmill, which were destroyed by a fire in 1888. The mills were built way out on the dock. The grist was taken to the mill by the teams of oxen. The sawmill and flour mill both used the same boiler and engine, were always built together, so they perished together as well. After the two fires, the mills were built back farther from the dock. The fire in 1912 didn't harm the mills. Andrew rebuilt the mills and added the shipping business. Andrew's son Adolph Roeser was the skipper of the tugboat, which carried fish and lumber for over 20 years. Then a shingle mill was added. In 1907, a second fire destroyed the mills. Adolph rebuilt the sawmill, shingle mill, and flour mill, and operated the business from 1912 to 1941. And that's a picture of the Roeser mills before the second fire.
And he didn't have the money to rebuild it, so he did have to go to the town people to help him. Because
Yeah.
it's so necessary for this whole community to have it. Work
So Polly's got a steel trap of a memory here, so I'm glad she can help out.
They were
So
going about, like, what else? So there's tons of newspaper articles, like, going back at all the different things.
So what she's saying is that the Roeser businesses, and they had a house that was very centralized to the hub of Sister Bay, and when they had the fire, it took the whole village to kind of help them rebuild, is what she was saying. So it's very important to have this as part of the community, and like what was introduced in the beginning, the Roeser family during the Depression, these type of things are a very giving family. And when people were really like down in hardships, they really helped out and rallied for a lot of the families. So when this happened, the tragedy happened, they were certainly welcomed with the whole community helping them rebuild and get back on their feet.
Well, it put a lot of people out of work.
So this is a close-up of the second flour mill. This picture of the third mill, it was the last of the tall red mills. It was burnt down in 1940. Another view of the flour mill from Clark Street looking northwest to the bay. It's a close-up picture of the lumber yard. And this picture was taken after the second fire. The lumber yard looking northwest. And Adolph's tug is in the background. This is about 1950.
Can I
Yes.
tell a story about that slide?
Yes.
This is my dad, Jerry.
We actually moved from Sister Bay when we were quite small. Lee and I, the family, would come from Sister Bay on weekends. Lee and I naturally couldn't sit still too long. We roamed the yards here in the lumber mill. And I remember one time with this slide right here, there's a little cart up, what they used to do, the water is right here on the edge of the picture here. Grandpa would go to Chambers Island in the springtime and corral the logs and bring them back to the sawmill. This particular time, this was in the summertime, the logs were not there, but there was a cart up in that building. It was on little wheels. And there was a truck going down there. Lee and I and a friend of ours, Clarky Betcher, I got the brainstorm idea, if I unravel enough chain up in that building, that's what they used to let the cart down and then load it with logs and bring it back up.
Oh, grandma.
If I unloaded enough chain to let that cart come down in the water, we're gonna have some fun. Not. I didn't unroll enough chain. We got about 2/3 down that ramp there and the chain stopped. We went sailing off that cart into the water. Head over heels. We didn't break any legs, any bones. We got a couple of bruises on our heads.
But we were warned by grandma, stay away from that.
Oh yeah, but still, that was part of the fun that we used to have when we'd come up here. So,
Yeah, was that grandpa's boat there or not?
wasn't that the Charlotte?
That could have been the Charlotte.
Grandpa used to take fishing tours out to Little Sister Island.
That could have been one of
People
the boats.
yeah, he'd take fishing excursions.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that was a nice boat.
Well,
That's about all I got to say to that.
good one, Jerry. Bird out.
So I'm going to have I'd like an open invitation, if it's okay with everybody, with Lee and my dad especially. I don't know that Jay would remember as much, but if you see a slide that you have any memories of, please, I would love that for our video and everything like that, if that's okay. This is a really good shot of the lumber yard as it looks out.
No, that lawn is.
And this is the fire of 1912. 6 buildings were destroyed in the central business area. A strong wind was blowing north, and the buildings quickly spread from building to building. The Roeser mills and the home were safe, remarkably. But Andrew did not lose a home that he was renting out. The first gasoline fire equipment was purchased in 1927, and the volunteer department was created. Adolph Roeser was the first fire chief. He held that position for 25 years. The equipment was stored in the Roeser house. There was a time when women of the community would bring their laundry to the bay during the summer months. Some said that it was a sad day when the husband would bring home a washing machine and they had to stay home to do the laundry. This was a view of the lumberyard from the Sister Bay Park. Andrew and Leona donated the land for the park to the village. So that beautiful park that's right central location there, that was donated by the family.
Do you gentlemen know what this pile of white stuff would be?
Limestone.
Limestone.
Yeah. Limestone. The coal, that used to be all a pile of coal. When big coal ships would come in, they'd unload there. But that right there is limestone. The big building on the left there, the dark building, that was Elmer Berns' feed mill. He had downsized a little bit from that building there. And that too was not part of the Roesers. However, Elmer Berns was a brother-in-law to Adolph, to the Roesers.
One more thing, Jerry. Beyond this building, there was an ice house right there, right?
Okay.
Am I right?
Okay. What Lee's saying, now the feed mill that you see right here, going up the road up here,
Clark Street.
out here was a 3-story house that we had talked about, the Roeser house. Between this and the 3-story house, in the property there, they had an ice house, a great big, in the bluff.
So it's 3
It was
stories.
a log cabin, 3-story ice house. They get the ice in the wintertime from here and haul it up and fill that ice house, and that's, people throughout the summer would come here, I don't know who owned it.
Grandpa.
Okay, well, they bought a box of ice from the ice house there, and it kept real well. Lee and I, again, on weekends,
Oh, yeah.
we found more fun in that
Oh, yeah.
ice house than we did
Oh,
anyplace
yeah.
else.
We used to get up on
Cedar
top of the
shavings.
block and jump into the shaving. What's fun? That's the fun of 1940s.
Right. There was layers of ice, big blocks of ice, and then covered up with cedar,
Yep.
the cedar shingles, and then more ice and cedar. And it was just nice.
Fun time,
It was,
yeah.
it was a fun time.
They didn't have Nintendo then.
This is a picture from the village park looking south at the Roeser lumberyard. Just a view of the beach at the park.
Could be Audrey.
Could have been Chicago.
This view of Sister Bay shows the stone entrance to the village park. It is on the left side of the picture.
Probably
That's
across.
an interesting picture.
Yes, that was Al Johnson's here. I think it was a grocery store at the time.
That's,
I don't remember that.
that's not the same building that it is now.
No.
No.
You wouldn't remember
It's
that.
been
What,
added on.
what is the stone structure?
The stone, that's the village hall.
The entryway.
Now, across from Al Johnson?
That's the village hall,
That
yeah.
still sits.
Yes, but this entry to the park is not there anymore.
The entry wasn't there anymore. What Al Johnson's was right across the street.
Across the street, yeah.
Right. What I like is that it's so quiet. There's just nothing.
Turn the mic on.
Yeah, you're a little.
That's why my dad would take a bobsled sled from the top of the hill and slide all the way down to Al Johnson's place.
You know, my grandmother told me the same thing.
They had about 5 guys on that bobsled. Sure.
Sounds like.
No traffic, but they slid down there.
During World War II, the names of the soldiers from the area were painted on this plaque at the entrance of the park. Here, the village hall is new in 1941.
Wow.
The boats. The Roesers had 7 boats. We only have a picture of a few of them. This one's really interesting. Roberta has some history on this one. The Roeser men were always on the water, but none of them could swim. I have a brother like that. He's the best sea-doo mechanic there is in Wisconsin, and he can't swim. Leona is sitting on the left side of the flagpole. Her little sister, or her little girls are to the right. Andrew is right behind the flagpole.
With his hat on.
With this, yeah, so Roberta and I were talking about, that's probably the ugly hat, is what we're thinking.
That made him present that.
Another view of the Volunteer, that was the name of the boat. Horses were scarce, but boats were plentiful. Boats were used for delivery of goods, fishing, on Sunday pleasure, trips to numerous points around Green Bay.
I have the steam inspection thing from the 1800s.
Yep.
Off that boat.
Yep. We have
It's an
my dad has a
old
steam
French.
inspection from that
On
boat.
that boat in the
You
1800s.
had to inspect the steam?
Yes, so it didn't burn.
Aw, the
This is the Leona R and the Hustler, a day of celebration. The Roesers were very religious people. The priest would come every month or so to serve Mass at the Roeser home. All the church sacraments, baptisms, confirmations, First Communion, weddings, etc. were performed while the priest was in town. They would hire a photographer for such occasions. Leona is standing at the bow of the boat on the left. The man standing highest on the rigging was a Hendrickson. Notice the huge pile of wood in the background.
That's along Clark Street.
This is the Leona, not to be confused with the Leona R. And here's another shot of the Leona. The tourist business got its start from the Goodrich boats, as transportation was foot, horse, or boat. That's a pretty big ship for back in those days.
Yes.
The arrival of the Goodrich boats brought new people and industry to the little town. Edith Becker was on the left. Edith Becker is the namesake of the big sailboats with the orange sails that gives tours from the marina.
To this day.
It's another picture of the, yep, it's big, it's pretty interesting. And here's the Charlotte, and this was skippered by Adolph Roeser.
I don't know what these boats are.
Yeah, not too. Yeah.
I have a few pictures of Kellstrom's dock, which is now the marina, and the Roesers didn't have anything to do with it, but it's a great view of the lumber yard, and it's fun to see how it has changed.
That is awesome.
I've got a story.
Okay.
So, the devils that we were, so it was 4th of July, right? So Jerry and I got the bright idea of catching fish the easy way, right? So we take our firecrackers in this area right here. We watched the fish come up after we let them off and buried the firecrackers down into the water. Do you remember it, Jerry, or not?
Cherry bombs.
Cherry bomb. Had to make the fish come up. It's an easy way of fishing, but that's my story of that little inlet there.
In the 1930s, a photographer from Milwaukee Journal came to Door County to take pictures. This is one of the ones that he took from Kellstrom's dock. The quality of the photo is pretty great because you can zoom right in and see all the details. And this is the Kellstrom dock looking north. And this is when Sister Bay decided to incorporate as a village and leave the township of Liberty Grove in 1912. A movement was instigated by Matt Roeser after his confidence with, is that Gross? On securing funds for road improvements. He was told that if they incorporated, they could handle their own funds and take care of the needed improvements. Sister Bay looking down Clark Street to the west. The Bunda store is on the left front. Lerner's store is on the right.
I didn't know that.
When did you get electricity? Because I see electric
Electricity.
poles.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, when would you think that they got electricity? Electricity.
Late 30s maybe?
I would say early 20s.
I think it was in the 20s because my grandpa bought a farm. And he
The-
paid for.
The question was is when did they get
He
electricity?
came down Highway 57 and he had to get a 3-year contract, so he had to pay so much a month for 3 years. That was a guarantee you had to pay regardless of what the situation was. My grandpa sold his cheese factory and moved farther north. Then that next building that he bought was also on 57, so he had to sign another 3-year contract for electricity for that place. But that was like in the
In the
1928,
20s.
1930, somewhere in there.
Okay, 20s, 30s. Thank you.
Yeah, how do you run a mill without electricity?
So Roberta's grandmother and sister and mother are leaning on the fence to the right of the hotel. This picture was taken before the fire of 1912. And I'm not sure when we can interject this, but Roberta's mother is the godchild of Adolph. So that's our connection here. Among a number of other ones too. This is the view looking north of Sister Bay in 1920.
From where?
On top of the hill,
Right.
it would seem, looking north.
Were you around in 20?
So Bluff Lake and St. Rosalia's Catholic Church. This picture was a view from the top of the hill looking north. This is the early view of the Catholic Church and Bluffside Lane. It's really interesting. Roberta, if you want to talk about this, where this road came in.
Oh, this, the highway, 57 is over there, 42 is coming down.
Yes.
And Andrew Roeser, this was part of his land, and he's the one that built the church. So he decided he would make a road on his land that would make it easier for the ox carts to get the lumber down to the water. And so he made that road. And there is an interesting piece about that. Okay, this is from the Door County Advocate. Some time ago, the village of Sister Bay had a problem with a diagonal road. Lee Telfer, surveyor, asked Henry Beckstrom how the road came to be. Henry told Lee that it had been a private road owned by Andrew Roeser Lumber Company. In 1909, it was a shortcut on his own private land to help the lumber wagons ease down to the harbor. Later, people built houses along this road, and since it did not have a right exit to the town bought Lee Johnson's house so they could tear it down and get an exit. And, says Henry, they still don't have all the problems solved. Henry Beckstrom was the only person around who remembered such detail. When he was a 10-year-old boy, there were only 11 houses in Sister Bay. There was a store owned by the Roeser Lumber Company. There were 2 Bunda stores owned by Frank and Wenzel. There was a Rude store for 5 years, and Rude gave a ticket of 5 cents for each cash sale. When you got 100 tickets, you got a free phonograph, a Victrola. So
That's Bluff Drive.
Is that Bluff Drive or Mill Road?
Right.
That's
Bluff
Bluffside.
Drive.
Yeah.
Turned into Bluff.
Because the highway is right there.
Oh, Bluffside House, duh.
Our
Right there.
house, well, this is all nice now. This church right now is a restaurant. The entrance is on the side here. They bought this office. Our house and the Adolph Roeser house are just down Bluff Drive here. It's a little rental right now. Cute little house and everything. The big Adolph Roeser house is still there, off from Bluff Drive where it meets. Is that Mill Road by Bunda's? Or is that
By the highway.
42 and what's by Bunda's there? What's it? Maple. This joins Maple then too. And then goes down right to the lake.
So why can't we get that road, why can't we give it back to Roeser? There you go.
That's long, boy.
Okay. So there's another view.
So this is another view of St. Rosalia's Church.
Chief.
So it says Chief A. Roeser for Fire Chief. 1930, a small note in history and a big step for Sister Bay and Liberty Grove. Handwritten notes from Sister Bay Village Board meetings records. A motion was made and carried that Adolph Roeser to be the fire chief, our first. The volunteers that were appointed during the same meetings: Clarence Broad, William Bunda, Emil Becker, William Berns, Gus Carlson, Lawrence Hoosby, Martin Hoosby, and Martin Jeske.
The meat market.
Adolph Roeser worked at the lumberyard and mills for 51 years.
I just want to say something to the Roeser clan, because this was their grandfather, right?
Yes.
And your grandmother was Julia Berns. And we have some Bernses right here tonight. Linda and Carol. So,
Judy? Julia? Was Judy your mother? Okay.
This is Adolph at his new office. You can see the coal pile behind the building. Adolph ran the business from 1914 to 1941. Adolph was also the first fire chief of the volunteer fire department. And those, like coal piles, yeah.
That's big. Grandma said, stay off the pile.
There's a coal ship. Boy, that's odd to see that now.
Speaking of, can I say something about coal piles?
Sure.
Speaking of coal piles, I visited my grandma and grandpa one time down in Florida. They used to spend their winters down in Florida. And Grandpa had brought from Sister Bay his old desk with him. I got in that one time, and here's Grandpa Roeser, Adolph's ledger. All handwritten stuff from the beginning of time. And I had noticed one little bit that he had written in there. He borrowed his brother Emil $2.25 to buy a suit so he could get married in it. But Emil had to work that $2.25 off. He didn't give it to him. And another little entry in there was, he would barter a lot. Somebody had come with a bucket. This must have been during the Depression time. Somebody had come with a bucket, knocking on Adolph's door. He gave him a couple of lumps of coal for a couple of chickens. Yeah, he'd barter out everything like that. But that's the way he was, you know. If you had something, we'll trade. I'm not going to charge you nothing, but he made it they're worthwhile. He was a good man, I guess. Yeah, that's Grandpa Adolph.
So Adolph, shown here with some workers at the coal piles. Looks like a dirty job.
Mike Roll.
This is a town right around circa 1935. You can see the Bunda store. So
Where's that tree?
the ice business. Liberty Grove relied on the winter harvest of ice. In 1922, the community was expecting to begin ice harvest as several inches had been added to the harbors. Adolph Roeser carried on the largest scale harvest with a gasoline ice cutting machine in Sister Bay. The outfit could cut 2,000 cakes at a day at capacity. Farmers, hotel keepers, and private families took advantage of the opportunity to store their season's supply from Mr. Roeser at so much a load, and the purchaser hauled it himself. The large quantities taken out allowed to sell at a lower cost than the local harvesters all along Liberty Grove shoreline. This was the Door County News of 1922.
Interjection? So in winter time, they used an old Model T with a blade on it on one back wheel that cut into the ice with a Model T on the back wheel. The blade stood maybe 3-4 foot, and it would cut the slices of of ice it wasn't in blocks yet. And they would slide those blocks up with a team of horses, right? And my dad tells the story of a team of horses being drugged down by two horses being drugged down by the weight of the ice that when they brought it up went back down into the water, and then the horses went with it. My dad tells the story of that, how that happened, and he can remember the horses squealing, and it was a sad day for my dad. Other than that, you got a little something on that story, Gary?
He dropped floor until the day he died.
Yeah, he can remember that story, but it's just something that
They lost the horses.
they lost the horses down into the water. I don't know if they're still there or not.
And this is just ending on a happy note, picnic in the spring. They really did accomplish many things. And thank you so much. So just a question, if you could raise hands, how many here are actually related to the Roeser family, please? So that's pretty, and hopefully after we wrap this up, if we could have a little social time to talk and get those memories and get a big picture. Yes. So there's right outside here. There's a barn that says the Historical Society. It'd be great to have a picture of extended family and things like that. One of the and I wish that I would have really taken time to really get the memories locked away, but I had an opportunity when I was pretty young, in my early 20s. I went golfing with either Bob or Lester Berns, and
Lester.
Was it Lester? So he took me golfing in Sturgeon Bay, and I tried, no, it was in Sturgeon Bay. So I tried to get as many memories and stories, but I wish that I had a smartphone, and I wish that I had pictures that I could have taken, and just because the memories here are just fantastic, and I hope that we can keep them for a long time. To what the Historical Society said earlier, we came up here for, I'm going to not say this name properly, but Chris Crindle Market, if I'm saying that properly. If those of you who have not experienced it, this was the first year that they put it on. We came up and it was literally, you couldn't make it any better. The weather, it was snowing. We had nickel-sized snowflakes coming down about this fast, and they had llamas out here, and it was literally like a Christmas in heaven. So if you can come up and experience that, it's well worth it. So
We're gonna have snow again this year?
yes.
You guys come.
We ordered it.
Did anybody have any questions, and that hopefully they can answer, or my dad and Lee or Jay, somebody could answer any questions?
Why so many fires? Does anybody know why the place kept on burning down?
I talked to Roberta about this, and we surmise that it's kind of the nature of that type of business. Wood, I mean, they made shingles, and it was inside of a building, and it was very dry.
No ocean?
And yeah, and just a little spark, it was like a tinderbox. So it would just take off very quickly, and it was just kind of the nature of that type of business.
It would make sense that he would become fire chief then.
A little self-serving, but he was experienced to try to save his livelihood, so yes, I agree. Go ahead.
I have a connection through our family with Adolph Roeser. So many people are here from the family. The might be interested.
100%.
Okay. My grandfather, I'm Robert Wilson, by the way. We bought land down by, we bought land down Little Sister Bay across from Anderson's Resort. Well, Anderson's Resort before that, it was Grant Anderson, who was a dairy farmer way back. In fact, he had the barn that you've got up there now. So we're across the bay from that. My grandfather came up in 1915 from Evanston. He wanted a quiet place to spend the summer because he was a professor at Northwestern. And he actually came up on the mail sledge in 1914 at Christmas time, rode up from Sturgeon Bay on the mail sledge, looked at the land and said, yeah, I'll buy that. He bought it from the widow of a fisherman who was, like Grant Anderson, was also a fisherman at the time. At any rate, his son was my father, and he was about 5 at that time. And when he was about 9, they'd been here several summers, and my grandfather was a real friendly type guy, and apparently had gotten in with a lot of the local people, the Andersons. The families were so many, they're all related to each other, or else they went to church with them or something like that. And so he knew Adolph quite well, and Adolph was going over to Menominee, this is about 1919, to get a load of shingles. At that point, maybe he wasn't making enough shingles, or for some reason anyway, he wanted to buy shingles, so he said. And my grandfather asked if he and his son could come along, and he said, sure, that's fine. So they went down, they got on the tug, they went over to Menominee. My grandfather and my father walked around town. When they got back to the tug in the afternoon, it was full of shingles, and they started back towards Sister Bay. Well, they got out this is a story about one other thing that Adolph brought to Sister Bay. They got out about 2 miles from the bay, and they started pulling off the shingles, and underneath was a load of beer. This was prohibition. And apparently this was a point where Wisconsin was dry, but Michigan, where Menominee is, was still wet. This is before the national thing. So he pulled out the cases of beer, and they all enjoyed the beer, and they gave my father or my grandfather some beer. He was a teetotaler actually, but he drank that beer because he didn't want Adolph to feel get irritated. Yeah. So then my grandfather died a few years later, but my father built a cabin in 1927 down on Little Sister Bay, and I know he bought the wood from Adolph because this is a piece of it. I did some work on the cabin a few years back, and this is one of the boards I took off. Adolph Roeser, Sister Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh, that's nice.
And when you want to get rid of that, I will be happy. Yes.
To add to that, Hotel du Nord, people know that, Fletcher stayed there, Kai's artist, Max. When the place burned down, they took it down. I took the house down, it was just to the north of that, I think called it the Wildwood or something, the Fletcher estate. So I took the house down, took all the trim off, and brought it home. And just recently I started bringing that trim out and redoing some trim at my house. I talked to somebody here this spring.
And that was Jim.
Yep. About these pieces of wood.
Yes.
Just like that one.
Yep.
I have dibs on one.
This one actually has, this one has some stairs, I'm mapping out some stairs on here, you can't see it. There's numbers here, these added up, and you get 2x4s and 2x6s and 2x8s. So whoever built that, I'd love to find out who built that house at the du Nord. Anybody knows? Let me know.
Wow.
There are so many of you guys here, you're going to have to chop this piece up into many pieces.
Doesn't say, if they're interested in hearing at the corner of the past, I'd be willing to get to that.
Yes.
So one thing that I can say in taking notes from this gentleman here, there was some relation from the Roeser family, from what I understand, over in the Marinette-Menominee area. So they used to go back and forth for trade and things, and I think they changed their name over there to Roeser. Yeah, and I thought there was a bottling company that actually had Roeser over there. So it's kind of interesting. We don't know quite much about that.
Andre's brother came over here from the motherland here, and he established his
Okay,
family.
so Andre that came over, his brother established roots over in the Marinette-Menominee area, according to the father. So.
Super. I have a question. Hello, everybody. Jeff Roeser. So, does anyone here? There's a recipe in the family that apparently only a few of us know about.
No, thank you for bringing
And I'm wondering if anybody among you has any idea what a club corker is. It's a potato dumpling with meat filling. And apparently we're the only ones that have any idea of its origins. You ever heard of a club corker?
Oh, we've heard of them, and we ate them.
Really?
Pork hocks in the center is the meat, among other things.
Another name, as go by Aunt Charlotte, was bullhead.
Oh, bullheads, yeah, they're sometimes referred to as bullheads. Anybody? Yeah, it's kind of its origin stories are kind of a mystery, and I'm just trying to figure out if anybody has ever heard of them.
So with that, one of the aunts are not here, and what we understand, I talked to Roberta a little bit about this. This dish has been in our family for a long time, and there's a few of us that make them. I just learned they're very difficult to make, very difficult. So what we understand that this dish, which is a potato patty with pork hocks, onions, and pepper put in the middle, and it's very, very interesting with sauerkraut. And we believe that it, according to Jan, that it came from actually the Berns side of the family. So that's what we were maybe told. So
Delicious.
It is, to this day, is my favorite food. So, and we believe it came from the Berns side of the family. So it's wonderful. So it'd be interesting to make that sometime and share it. So, but thanks for bringing that up, because Roberta and I did talk about that. That is right. That is a dish
Somebody knew where it came from.
right from this area. It's very, very authentic. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, not. Thank you so much for coming.